Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Eden.
And I'm your other host, Peter.
Hey, Peter, how you been? What you been up to?
I've been okay. Just working, staying busy. Haven't really been up to a whole lot. I mean, I've been trying to think. I was thinking before we started recording, and I was like, gosh, is there anything really worth mentioning? And I can't think of it. So, yeah, not a whole lot. How about you? How are you doing? What have you been up to?
The heat broke a little bit, but now it's kind of back. It's not as humid as it has been, but it's still been kind of nasty. Like it's a rough summer. I think we're getting every summer is going to be rough now. Thanks, politicians, for not having the will to power to try to stop global emissions.
Agreed. Yeah, it's just great. It's just great.
Just lovely. Anyway, what you been up to? You done anything fun? Anything worth mentioning?
Honestly, sadly, no. I don't know. In fact, as I think back, I have not gone back to play any more Cyberpunk. In part, have not had a lot of time. And in the other part, as we kind of talked about a couple weeks ago, I've got to be in the right mind space for that game. And
sure.
The few times I might have had enough time to sit down and actually get into it and spend enough time that it made sense to do it, I just haven't been in that mind space. Work's been pretty busy. Things are kind of stressful right now. So honestly, mostly dealing with that. When it comes to reading, I'm still just reading productivity books, which maybe is part of the problem, and maybe I should read something that's a little more fun.
You've been reading productivity books? Like which books? What are we talking here?
I mean, we're talking, I'm reading Getting Things Done by David Allen. I am reading, I'm trying to think of names.
Is that I think I've read Getting Things Done. Is that the one where it's like, if you see a thing that needs to be done and you have the time and capacity to do it right this second, fucking do it right this second? Is that the Getting Things Done theory?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, basically the idea is that you need to develop a reliable system that when you have a thought, you can immediately get that thought out of your brain and somewhere. And then have that part of that system is coming back to those thoughts and processing them and deciding where do they go, where do they belong, and coming up with a hierarchy of what and when to do. And part of that is if the task, kind of the random number he uses is he says, if the task is going to take you less than 2 minutes, then just do it right then. So it's that kind of stuff. It's there's another book by Scott Young called Get Better at Anything. There's another one called Feel Good Productivity. I've just, I don't know. I'm trying to become a better, more productive person. And I think it's funny. It's like right now I'm probably stressing myself out more by having this be what I read in my downtime. But at the same time, the thought of trying to come up with something else to read is really overwhelming right now. So I'm like, screw it. I'll just read this. But yeah,
I will say, as a person who used to host a podcast where the whole gimmick was we read self-help books, you got to pace those suckers out. They're bad for you.
Oh, no. And I've been working on this for a number of weeks because I really will only read a few pages at a time. I'll get through like one section and then I call it good. So I'm not spending significant amounts of time at any one time reading it. It's usually, like I say, I'd be shocked if it's more than 15 minutes at a time. Because for that very reason, I'm like, I'm not going to bury myself in this because this isn't something worth burying myself in. But yeah, other than that, honestly, not a whole lot. How about you? What you been checking out or getting into? Anything interesting?
Yeah, I have been keeping busy because you might remember, dear listeners, as well as dear co-host Peter, Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail came out last Friday.
I knew it was coming, but I couldn't remember when. So,
and I don't remember if we said this on the pod or if I just mentioned it to you beforehand. This was really a make or break moment for me in Final Fantasy XIV. I had been feeling really down on the last expansion. I thought that the fights kind of sucked and the story sucked. And I was hoping for something new. I was looking, they have like, they so conveniently tell you how many days you have been subscribed from the front page as you're waiting to log in. Sure. And I saw that number 1,530 and I thought, oh my God, I have given Square Enix $15 a month for how long?
That is a lot of
and
days.
The answer is 4.5 years at this point. So I was like, Dawn Trail comes out and I don't like it, then I'm going to unsubscribe for a bit. And I'll come back once or twice a year, play through whatever content has come out since the last time I played, but I won't keep an active subscription. And then Dawn Trail comes out. And I don't know if you've seen anything. I know that you like follow some like gaming publications, and I don't know how much you see on like Reddit or things like that. I have two things that I will say here at the start, and then I'll go into a little more detail.
Okay.
First off, Dawn Trail is delightful. It's the most fun I've had with an expansion of Final Fantasy XIV since Stormblood, which is my favorite of the expansions. However, that is a, how should I say, controversial opinion. Okay. Most people think Stormblood is the worst expansion, and that contributes to my second point here. The audience is mid. The audience for Final Fantasy XIV are a bunch of dipshits who don't know what actually good stories are. Okay. Because they think that the terrible stuff is good and that the great stuff is bad. And that happened with Stormblood, and it's happening with Dawn Trail because people are like, this expansion sucks. We're basically playing second fiddle to this new character. And you're like, okay, guys, here's the deal. They spent a decade plus telling the story of the big connected story that all wrapped up in the last one, where you literally ended by going to the edge of the universe and fighting against the embodiment of nihility so that she would stop singing the song that makes all of creation want to suicide itself. So you got to go lower stakes now. You flew to the edge of the universe and defeated the embodiment of nihility. You got to go lower stakes. And like, why do you need to be the center of attention? You've been the center of attention for a long time. How many gods have you killed at this point? Dozens of gods? You've just killed them? This is what you do. So this expansion, you are basically a mentor to a new character who could really use a little guidance from someone who's been through the shit. And you, dear player, have been through the shit. So you are there to help her out. And I think she's a delightful new character. Her name is Wook Lamont. She is this huge lion lady. I think she's incredible. And the audience does not like her. The regular player, I guess, of Final Fantasy XIV thinks, why wasn't I the main character? And it's like, because that's boring now. We need to be in a mentor position to new characters. You can't tell the same story again. They've told it so many times with continuing escalation of stakes until we flew to the edge of the universe and killed nihility. So like, just deal with it, guys. I had a delightful time. You go around, you go on some adventures, some suitably, minorly apocalyptic-y, not like world-destroying, because you stop it pretty easily. Stuff happens, but it's fun, it's interesting, and most importantly, the fights are very good. The dungeons are some of the most fun dungeons I've done in a long time. The trials, the big boss fights, the 8-people fights are incredible. I cannot wait to try the extreme versions of those boss fights. I think that if they land the patches, because again, I mentioned Stormblood is my favorite, and I think the reason Stormblood is my favorite is it is less about like big world ending, go to another dimension, or fly to the edge of space bullshit, and it is, I'm going to help some freedom fighters fight against the empire that is enslaving them. And that is the point of Stormblood, is you are working with revolutionaries to try to overthrow this empire that has enslaved them. And that's cool to me. That's fun to me. Smaller stakes, more grounded stakes. Sure. And that's what Dawn Trail does. My problem with Stormblood is the patches that came afterwards that have some of the most wretched things that ever happened in that game in them. So the base game, I really love. The patches, especially patch 4.1 through 4.3, into the dumpster with it. So if Dawn Trail lands and makes good patch content, it might take the place of my favorite expansion to Final Fantasy XIV.
Okay.
So, and this is a controversial opinion. The people online would say I'm a crazy person for saying this, but I think that I'm right because it's my opinion and it's in my brain and it feels true.
There you go. There you go.
So I've been really enjoying it. It's fun to get back into it. I made a new alt character because now you can be big lion ladies. So I had to make a big lion lady and try her out and be running around as a big old lion lady. It's pretty fun. I'm liking the game again. I feel renewed interest in a game that I was feeling very stagnant on. So that is very exciting to me.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that it has been, at least thus far, a success and not a bomb for you.
Yeah, for me, it's been really good. I'm having a blast. I haven't even touched the 2 new jobs yet, the 2 new combat classes. One of them is Viper, which is 2 swords, but what if you combine them into 1 Darth Maul sword sometimes for some of your attacks?
All right.
I haven't even touched it yet. And the other one is Pictomancer, aka what if you paint shit and it kills guys?
That's kind of a cool idea.
That's a very cool idea. It looks really flashy. One of the main NPCs has switched her job to Pictomancer as part of this new expansion. And so she comes on in all of the dungeons with you if you're running it with the NPCs instead of with regular people. And the effects seem very cool. I'm excited to give Pictomancer a try. Also, it's called a Pictomancer. That's just a cool name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I'm excited to keep digging in and level all the jobs again and see what kind of fun stuff I can get up to in that game again.
Nice. Very good.
And let's see, what else have I been up to? I have been playing this mobile game that's not very good, but I still log in every day and play it. Are you familiar with the Nikki series of dress-up games?
No, I am not.
Okay, that makes sense. So they have it. There's an older game.
You don't sound surprised.
There's an older game I played a few years ago for quite a while called Love Nikki, which again, it's essentially, you were talking about it in the last episode, like paper dolls, where you swap the outfits. But what if video game? And I played Love Nikki, which was the first one. They've have a sequel out that I'm playing now called Shining Nikki. I got back interested in these games because they have a game coming out this fall called Infinity Nikki, which I don't know if you have seen any of the trailers for.
No, I have not.
Infinity
Where would one
Nikki,
find such trailers?
On Summer Games Fest. Because Infinity Nikki,
any of the coverage.
I don't either, but Infinity Nikki is not a phone game anymore. It is a PS5 PC game that is basically open world Breath of the Wild, but instead of combat, it's a dress-up game.
Okay.
So you change your outfits to get different abilities. I need to be able to jump higher, so let me put together a new outfit that'll help me jump higher. Or I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be a disaster, but an interesting disaster, and I'm excited about it, which reminded me of the Nikki series. So I got back into playing Shining Nikki, and it's the weirdest game that I've ever played in terms of dissonance between the actions that you're doing in the game and the story that the game is trying to tell you. Because essentially, apparently Love Nikki ended with the end of the world. And the whole world was destroyed is how the first game ended.
Okay.
And again, this is a game about styling. This is a game about getting dressed up in fancy clothes. But the world ended. So you, Nikki, the main character, not you, because you are a stylist who you give your own name and you're Nikki's best friend. You all get transported 680 years into the past in order to try to avert the disaster that ended the world of Miraland. So what does that mean? I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to collect parts of a manuscript and then trying to decipher the parts of a manuscript. Currently where I am in chapter 5, I am undercover as a different person trying to infiltrate the secret underground auction for the manuscript pages of Leonid's manuscript pages, which were stolen from me. Let's be perfectly clear, by someone who I thought was an ally, but was instead my enemy, who hurt a good friend of mine and then took my stuff. Now, how did they do it? Through outfits. And how do you fight back? Through the outfits that you make, because your styling power is what is the whole thing here. So again, I'm trying to save the world. I'm getting into these like fights ? And having to like do this combat ? That is expressed on screen by your character posing and then you clicking a button that says shiny, shiny when it's highlighting your different accoutrement, or clicking the dress button when it's tallying the score for your dress so you get more dress points. And then you defeat the bad guys with outfit. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But there's something compelling about it because I keep coming back to it.
Cool.
But that's all I'll mention today. There's other stuff I've been up to. The brand new Hoyoverse game came out last night. It's called Zenless Zone Zero. Very splashy action combat game, kind of a roguelike style action combat game. I don't know if I'll like it or not, but I was playing it for an hour earlier today, so nice. I'll report back if it's interesting. But that's all that's really worth mentioning.
Very good.
Because we need to get to the main attraction. Because I'm very curious. I'm very curious to have this conversation with you. All right, dear listeners, I am in this Discord with a bunch of other people. It doesn't matter why this Discord exists. It's a fairly good-sized Discord. And there's a TV and film page or sub forum or whatever you want to call a Discord thing. Channel.
Isn't that what they are? They call them channels.
Channels.
There we go.
Stupid. Whatever. Anyway, often in there, they're talking about films and shows that they like. And there's one that was coming up pretty constantly. And people were very glowing in their praise of this film that had, as far as I know, been a critical and a commercial failure. And I thought to myself, maybe I should see this movie at some point. So after we had recorded our last episode, I was like, maybe we should do this thing and watch this movie that had been praised by these people whose opinions I generally jive with, even if I don't always agree with them. And so, dear listeners, we watched 2008's Speed Racer by the Wachowskis. Peter, how did you find the movie Speed Racer?
That is an interesting and somewhat complicated question to answer. So I'll do my best. We started watching Speed Racer, watched it this afternoon. Also, of note, folks, this is interesting. I feel a little bad. $3.99 to rent from Apple/iTunes, $4.99 to buy from Apple/iTunes. One whole extra $1. Anyway, started watching it, and all I could think to myself is, this movie's weird. And I'm kind of watching it, and I'm like, I'm not having a great time, but I'm not having a bad time, but this movie's weird. And the movie kind of continues. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, look, I'm familiar with the source material, but I don't recall ever really watching it or getting into it. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe I'd be more into this if I was, had a stronger tie to the source material, and I'm kind of going along, and I'm like, oh, this is like 2 hours and 9 minutes until you hit the credits. And then we get to the rally race, which I can't remember the name of it right now. And then that starts. And then the next thing I knew, I was totally 100% on board with this movie. I was sucked in. I was loving this movie, and we get to the Grand Prix at the end, and I am I'm so into it. And so in the end, I thought this movie was fucking awesome. And I think it's such a tragedy that it bombed when it came out, because this movie is a trip, but it got me there. I got to give this movie full credit for getting me to a place that for probably almost the first half, I did not think it was going to get me there, but it got me there 100%. Totally got me there. So there's my complex answer to your question. What about you, Eden?
I felt the same way. Through the first 45 minutes, hour of this movie, I was like, okay, they're doing some interesting stylistic choices. I'll give the Wachowskis credit here. This is not a normal movie by any stretch of the imagination. They're doing a lot of radical experimentalism when it comes to pacing, when it comes to cuts, they're doing a lot of stuff that's like postmodernist cinema-esque.
I mean, a ton of non-linear storytelling and which really requires you to be paying attention so that you can figure out what's what.
Really strange cuts where like they're doing wipe cuts, but instead of using a regular wipe, they're using a person to wipe from one scene to another scene and things like that. And so I was just like, I see stylistically what they're going for, but like, I'm not catching the vision. And then like you said, good Lord in heaven, when the Casa Cristo 5000 starts, suddenly I am like, oh, we're doing something here. And I legitimately teared up in that final sequence of the Grand Prix. Like after, I mean, we'll get there, but like that last 30, 45 seconds of the Grand Prix when Speed is coming back from nothing and like it starts to just, the whole world goes red and white checker tube. And like, I was like tearing up because I was like, the cinema. You couldn't do this any other way. This is the only medium this works in. And it was just like, it was like a vision of better movies and more interesting movies. And we'll talk about that. But like, I finished it and I went on the Discord and I was like, good God in heaven. Like, what is this movie? And one of my friends in there says, and think about what came out in the summer of 2008 and what were the other rival blockbusters that pushed this out of the way and became the template for the next 15 years of blockbuster movies.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight and Iron Man. Both of which fine movies. I don't like Dark Knight as much as most people do. I think it's an okay Batman movie. I don't think it's the best Batman movie. I certainly don't think it's the best superhero movie as many people claim.
Yeah.
It's fine though. It's good. I think it's worse than Batman Begins because Batman Begins is interesting and kind of fun, and Dark Knight is not fun. There's nothing fun in that movie. And so I'm like,
dour.
It's dour and it's bleak and it's very blue and like it's just. And then Iron Man is like the kickoff to the MCU. So it is the like prototype of the MCU movie. Funny, quippy, mid special effects, big fight at the end. Okay, that's fine. But like those two movies were the template.
Uh-huh.
And could you imagine a world where people watched Speed Racer and said, I want to fucking do that, dog? And we had 15 years of these?
That'd be wild.
It hurts my heart to think of how much better cinema could be if this was the thing that people took away from it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that I had not thought of.
It's wild. It's just wild. And we'll talk about it. I'll do a quick recap. We don't need to get too in depth with the recap because there isn't that much there. There's a guy. His name is literally, his Christian name is Speed Racer. And his dad, Pops Racer. Do you find out what his name is? No, his name is Pops. Pops Racer owns a racing company, and his older brother Rex is their racer. And Rex gets in a crash and dies after leaving the family mysteriously, and everyone's sad about it. Speed grows up. He's now 18 years old, which, okay, Emil Hirsch, I guess you are trying to act like you're 18 here. You sure don't look it. And boy, definitely does your girlfriend Christina Ricci not look 18, but we won't worry about that. He grows up. He does the race. He's really good. He's got his car and he's kicking ass at this race. And because he does so well in this race, this guy, Arnold Royalton of the Royalton Industries, shows up at their house. And again, just to the absurdity of this film, they think an earthquake is happening. This is the morning after the race. They're all sitting around eating pancakes. They think an earthquake is happening. No, it's this guy landing an aircraft across the street from their house. That's the kind of movie we're dealing with here, folks. And he picks them up and takes them to his factory where he tries to get Speed to sign as one of his drivers. Speed eventually ends up declining because he's like, my dad always said that like a big sellout like this is the devil, man. Like, this is not what I want to do. And so Royalton reveals these races are all fixed. There's no real racing. Like, that's all fixed. It's all just negotiated between the large corporations that own these racers, and that like breaks Speed's heart. He gets in a crash that destroys his car. His father gets sued for IP infringement, and then like they're all down in the dumps. An investigator comes, an investigator whose job it is to find out stuff about the racing, and he comes with a racer named Racer X and says, we need you to join up with this other racer that was kicked out of a race. And if the three of you are able to win, then you'll be able to get into the Grand Prix, and we can like, he has promised to testify against these bigwig corporation dudes that all these races are being fixed if he wins this race. So Racer X, who in the original show, as far as I can tell, Racer X is kind of like his like rival, that Speed Racer's rival. Mm-hmm. And they team up with this other guy, Tejo, to team up in this 3-person rally race. And again, this is where things really go off the rails. It is like a cross-country rally race across deserts, in the mountains, the snowy mountains, and we'll get into the details of how these car races go after I finish the summary, because we really have to talk about what these car races look like. Eventually, through a series of wild adventures, including but not limited to them having to stop in the middle of the race, swap drivers, and stop this evil dude who was one of the fixers in a big old fight, a big old brawl in the tundra, they end up winning. But then Tejo, it's revealed to this have all have been a way to try to raise the stock prices of his father's company so that Royalton could buy it out, and then the family could earn more money. This enrages Speed because he feels like he has been taken advantage of. He goes out to the track and Racer X is there. He confronts Racer X with his problems and he says, Racer X, I think you're my brother Rex. I think he faked his death. And then Racer X takes off his mask. It's an unfamiliar face. And he's like, no, Rex is dead, but like, you got to race, bud. Like, I want to be there when you realize that you have the heart of a racer. And then he like leaves and Speed realizes he's got the heart of the racer. Tejo's sister Haruko shows up and says, hey, here's the entry that Tejo was supposed to use to get into the Grand Prix. He's not using it. You should use it. So the family throws everything together. They put a car together in 32 hours, a new Mach 6. Speed enters the Grand Prix. Royalton puts $1 million bounty on his head to any of the racers that are able to take him out, and shenanigans ensue. Eventually, like this huge, like the biggest name in racing, Jack Cannonball Taylor does an illegal move to try to stop Speed. He exposes that illegal move, is able to defeat him, get his car restarted, and then, like I say, it's the most glorious 2 or 3 minutes of filmmaking I've maybe seen in a minute. Like, it's incredible. He wins the race. The movie ends. You do find out that Racer X is in fact his brother Rex. He just had facial reconstruction surgery to change his appearance. But that's how the movie ends. Speed and Trixie kiss. Tejo ends up testifying against the bad guys after all. Royalton is sent to jail, and the credits start. It's wild. Like, the racing is unlike anything I've ever seen on a film before. The way that these cars are like whipping around and maneuvering in ways that regular human cars have never in a million years is just, it's arresting to look at, you know?
Yeah, it really is.
It's just like, I can't describe it. It feels like you're seeing into a different reality where physics works differently almost.
Yeah.
And this is the way that car races would work there. Because, like, these cars whip around. They clearly have, like, back tires that can also turn as well as the front tires. They've got weird pistons on them. In the rally race, all of the cars are modified to have a bunch of, like,
Weapons
offensive and defensive weapons. So, like, first off, all the cars, and this is just normal in all the races, have little, like, feet that pop out the bottom of them so you can like pump into the air and then land to like get over people or things like that. And that's like just normal apparently. So that's not like the illegal weapons that they put in later, but like, you know, they install reinflate tires. So if your tire shreds, you just push a button and then, oops, you got a tire again. And then those tires have spikes in them. Don't worry about it. What if you need to climb? Then there's spikes in your tire. Or what if people are trying to shred your tires? What if a little shield pops out and then gets into a sword fight with the sword on the other person's tire?
Yes.
I don't know. It's wild. What else did you think about this movie, Peter?
Well, so again, I do want to come back to the visuals. The visuals, I mean, I remember seeing the advertisements for this many years ago and thinking to myself, wow, they're going for a style here. And I've got to give the Wachowskis full credit. I mean, they commit to this stylized world full on. I mean, it is very, at the very beginning. So you start off and you've got Speed in class, not paying attention, just thinking about he wants to leave. And then he runs out to go get in the car with his brother Rex. And the visuals of that, it looks like kind of a multi-layered diorama. You know, you've got Rex and his brother, you got Rex and the car in the foreground, and then there's like some houses and bushes behind them, and then it looks like another layer, but it almost has this 2D, but in that 3D diorama kind of depth appearance to it that is very interesting. And everything is like, very colorful and bright, and go ahead.
Things almost feel like, listeners, if you haven't seen the movie, like, if you've ever played the game Doom, where they are faking 3D images through flat 2D images layered on top of each other.
Yes.
That's what this feels like. It feels like it is false 3D through the layering of 2D like elements.
Yeah, very much so. And it just continues. And it sometimes was my only complaint, honestly, is that sometimes it felt the colors were almost too saturated for me to really follow what was happening in some of the races. Because there's so much going on and these cars are moving and flipping, and, you know, the course when they're on like the Grand Prix or at the, I'm blanking on the name of the other one, you know, it's going up and it's down and they're going upside down and all this kind of stuff. And there's so much happening that was my only, again, they totally committed to it. That's great. It just occasionally was a little hard for me to follow what was going on because the colors were so vivid and so saturated, but it's an aesthetic that they were going for and they fully commit to it. And when they're in Royalton's plane, ship, whatever thing, and they're flying into the big city, you know, again, it's like, what if, here's what it reminded me of, and this is recency bias. What if Night City, but by the Pixar people, and then you crank the saturation up to 15? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like this big, crowded, kind of futuristic looking city, but kind of has this cartoony feel to it. And again, they really went for it. And I thought it was fun to watch. If, like, everything else aside, visually, it was something that was a little off-putting at the beginning, but as it continued and as it was consistent, it became really engaging for me visually, I thought.
Yeah. I want to read this quote from Lana Wachowski talking about why they made this movie look the way it looked. And it's a little long, but I think that it really situates the choices that they make as filmmakers here in a really interesting way. And she says, the whole impetus for Speed Racer came out of the fact that we are visually thinking people. We go to art galleries and art museums all the time. We go to the Art Institute of Chicago, and every room there are paintings that look completely and utterly different from the other rooms. But in cinema, everything looks the same, and it's really aggressive straitjacket aesthetically. We started talking about cubism, for instance, and we started talking about, could you make a cubist film? And we realized that if you tried to make a cubist film for adults, you'd end up like Picasso running from the angry mob when he first showed Guernica. They wanted to kill him, literally. It's because adults, they reject change, and an aesthetic change is too aggressive a death for them. Every generation experiences aesthetic death, and when you really assault an aesthetic, people freak out. But we said kids are okay with an aesthetic change. This is a film that is an assault on every single modern aesthetic, and that is true. It is an assault on the modern filmmaking aesthetic. And again, especially juxtaposing it against Dark Knight and Iron Man, which are perfect exemplars of modern filmmaking aesthetics. This just feels like from a different dimension. It feels like you dimension shifted one universe over, and you're like, oh, this is how movies are here. This ain't how they are where I'm from.
Yeah. No, it
was really interesting to me that like the Wachowskis, changed film forever with The Matrix. Like that is an incontrovertible fact. That movie came out and then every single person was like, I want to make that. And every movie for the next 10 years looked exactly like The Matrix, for better or for worse, often for worse, sometimes for good. Some of those movies that are kind of like wish you were the Matrix-y movies are actually pretty okay. But like aesthetically, they changed movie making forever. And I think that they were like, well, let's do that again. And unfortunately, the people did not catch the vision this time. And instead they looked at it and they said, yucca ducka.
Yeah. Yeah. No, visually, again, it's just something else. One of the other things that I want to get back to is, well, not so much get back to, but that I really, here's where I think the movie really got me. And again, common refrain, I've brought it up many times, but in my fiction, characters are the key.
Yeah.
And I thought that almost everybody, the only real exception would be the guy, which I'm blanking on his name, who is Racer X. He felt a little flat. He didn't. But then again, I think that's kind of his deal because in the little bits of Lost I've seen, he did the same thing. He just didn't shock me. But like everybody else, especially the whole family and the the racer crew, like they're so endearing. And, for me,
could you imagine if your mom and dad were Susan Sarandon and John Goodman?
Right. And like the scene, so in the Casa Cristo, in the rally, after like the first day, they get to the place and they're there in their hotel and ninjas get sent for each one of the three people on this team. And the ninja comes in and it's his little brother, which I'm blanking on his name now, but his little brother's the one who he rolls off of the couch onto the floor. That wakes him up. He pulls his sleep mask on. There we go. Spritel. He sees the ninja about ready to like stab Speed. He screams. We get a little fight, back and forth. And then Pops shows up. And Pop shows up and just dismantles this ninja, just utterly devastates him.
Well, and again, like, why does he do that? It hyper zooms into a ring on his finger that shows there's like the championship ring for a Greco-Roman wrestling. So he starts doing some like Greco-Roman style wrestling style moves on this ninja and just beats the tar out of the guy.
Oh yeah, totally does. And so then like I'm on board with him as a character, and it's kind of cheesy and it kind of feels cliche, but Speed goes away with Trixie to do this race because she convinces him, look, you need me. I can spot for you. I can help. So he agrees, but they're not going to tell the rest of the family because they know the rest of the family's opposed to this. I mean, this is the race that Rex died in, and there's a lot of reasons for them to not want Speed to participate in this. They find out, they show up, they look angry, but then there's a really good scene, I think, where Speed says, look, I'm not a kid, I'm an adult, and I need to do this, and this is my decision, and you can't stop me. And Pops, he wants to stop him, but Pops is then like, all right, fine, if you're going to do this, we're all doing this because you need us all and we're going to do this together. And I think that that's a really endearing scene that probably, I mean, I liked the first part of the race, but I think that whole scene for me right there, if I had to say there's a part of the movie where I completely came around and I was totally on board from that point on, it's that whole scene there in the hotel with the confrontation with the family and with Speed, being an adult and saying, no, look, I'm going to do this. This is what I need to do. And with the family going, then we're here for you. We're going to support you. We're going to be your crew. We're going to be your team. And then the hilarious, hijinks with the ninjas and all this kind of stuff. And I think it was really after that scene where I was like, yep, I'm totally in. I'm on board. I'm here for the ride. Let's go. Take me, show me more. And I think that was an important, again, for the things that are important to me in my fiction that make me connect with something. I think that really was the scene that got that connection for me.
Yeah, another one of those scenes that I felt like worked really well for me is you see in flashback / normal time. It's weird because, again, the normal rules of like order here of like sequence are kind of broken, especially in the early parts of the film. But like Rex has a falling out with his dad and then leaves. And, they have like that type of conversation you expect a stern dad to have with his kid who's leaving, where he's like, if you walk out that door, don't you ever come back. And then they don't speak again until Rex supposedly dies. And like, that has a big effect on the family. So then after the Conde Cristo situation, and they realize that like, Tejo has like lied to them. Speed's like, I gotta go too. I gotta leave. And, his dad catches him as he's walking out in almost an identical shot to when Rex leaves. And instead of being like yelling and being like, don't you dare leave. If you leave, don't ever come back. He says, come sit down with me and let's talk. And they have this real serious heart to heart where they talk about how like he realizes he made a big mistake and he can never make that mistake right. Even though Rex is still alive, don't worry about it. He can't rectify the mistake that he made with Rex. And so this time, instead of being mad about it and saying, don't you ever come back, he's saying, I love you, stay safe, and the door is always open to you. This is always your home, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then, the doorbell rings and Haruko is there with the invitation, and then the whole family has been around the corner in the kitchen.
Spying, listening.
Also, yeah. The whole family, including the mechanic that works for them and his girlfriend. So like everybody's there, and the chimpanzee that is his little brother's pet. Don't worry about it. But like everyone's there and they're like, we are a family and we're here for you. And then he gets that thing and they're like, okay, well, this race is in 2 days and we don't have a car. And they're like, well, we got 32 hours to build a car then. And like, again, it really works on that interpersonal level of like showing this family loving each other and caring about each other and supporting each other. And especially supporting Speed as he does these things that no one else could do, and that he is able to race so incredibly, but that his whole family supports and loves him for it. And even down to like Rex is there and watching the race in like his box seat with the inspector and his girlfriend. And then the inspector's like, after he wins, he's like, do you want to go down there and like celebrate with them? And he's like, no, like that's not my place. Like this is his day. Let it be his day. And it was a cool movie.
It was.
I really felt goofy.
Go ahead.
I just really felt goofy tearing up at the end of a pretty goofy movie, but like it was an assault on the senses in the most positive way I could possibly say that.
Yeah, it would. I guess the two words that kind of came to my mind is that it's interesting to me because it is such an assault on the senses, but I found it to be a very charming and a very endearing movie. And,
I'd watch it again in a second.
Oh yeah. And I said to my son, Gareth, who watched it with me, cause he watches most of these things with me. I said to him, I'm glad we spent that extra $1 to buy it instead of just renting it, because it's not on 4K Blu-ray for some reason. I feel like this is a show
Like, this is a movie that when you walk into the Best Buy and they've got that enormous wall of 75 TVs from 30 to 100 inches, this is the movie that should be playing on those TVs.
Oh, yeah. You're going to sell TVs. You're going to sell TVs with this movie.
And so it blows my mind. It's not available in 4K. And like,
no, even when I rented or bought it on iTunes, it was just HD. They didn't even have a digital 4K version of it.
Yeah, I want a 4K Blu-ray of this movie. I pirated it. I did not buy it because I wasn't sure whether I'd like it or not. But as soon as they put out a 4K Blu-ray, I'm buying that sucker. So get on it, Warner Brothers.
Right? Now, I was very surprised at my feelings for this movie by the end. Because, as you said, it really was that first 45 to 60 minutes. I was really not certain. And again, it wasn't like some of the previous movies we watched that I will leave unmentioned, where I was like, oh no, mistakes have been made. What have I done to myself? It was kind of one of these where, again, I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, I'll be really interested to hear what Eden has to say about it. Because, sorry, lost my train of thought there. I'll fix this in post. I was really curious to see what you were going to think about this because, again, at the beginning, I was kind of, okay, we've got a visual style, but I don't know what I think about this movie. And then by the end, I was like, yeah, I'll definitely be watching this movie again at some point.
Yeah, this is like the perfect put on in the background. And every time I look over at the screen, I can be like, oh, that's delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. This could be a short episode, but I will just say, if you haven't seen it, folks, you got to go watch this sucker. I am astounded at how much I liked this movie, and I shouldn't be. The Wachowskis make good damn movies. I will stand up for The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. I know people don't like them as much, and Revolutions has some problems, but like The Matrix Reloaded, that scene on the interstate when Morpheus has his fucking katana and he takes out a goddamn Escalade with a katana is the coolest thing I've ever seen in a movie. And like, this movie is that, except in barfing Technicolor for 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
It's incredible to look at. And, I had a very good time. I am very glad that all those weirdos in that Discord I'm in were like, no, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. You have to watch this. And I'm glad that it's had like this resurgence as this is a genuine cult classic. Because when this movie came out, it did extremely poorly. The critical response is very bad. It's got a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, a Metacritic score of 37, but a cinema score average of an A-. Because the people are coming around on this movie and they've realized the critics were wrong on this one. They blew it. They missed what was going on here. This is, in fact, an unsung masterpiece that people just weren't ready for in 2008, but I guess we are now today in 2024.
Yeah, I was a little apprehensive because, you go in to rent or buy a movie on the Apple TV, and I'm sure all the other set-top boxes do the same thing, but it will have the Rotten Tomatoes score there. And so I saw that and I'm like, 42, but I'm like, that's okay. We'll give this a shot. Let's go in with as open of a mind as I can. And by the time I was done, I was like, what the hell were those critics on? I mean, it feels to me, now I didn't go back and try and read any of these, but I look at that score and it'll even break it down a little bit in the Apple TV interface to say literally how many total reviews, how many were fresh, how many were not, that kind of thing. So I'm looking at it and I'm like 120 something bad, like overall negative reviews because of the way Rotten Tomatoes works. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, were you all just jaded? Had somebody just punched you in the butt, like in the gut, but like right before you watch, like, did you have the flu when you watched this? Like, where is all the not dramatically overwhelming? I mean, this is no like Madam Web with like an 11 or something, but like I'm like
42 is
58% of the
low.
people, 58% of the people who watched this gave it an overall negative review. And I kind of just sat there at the end of it going, do you people just dislike joy and fun and life and color? Because I think you might. I think you might.
Yeah, and it's just I just had a blast, and I wish that more people had watched this and said, I want to make that movie.
Yeah.
I just want more movies like this. Like, I've seen my fill of movies trying to be The Dark Knight. I've seen my fill of movies trying to be Iron Man. I want more movies trying to be Speed Racer.
I don't disagree with you. I think the world would be a slightly more fun and joy-filled place if there was more entertainment that embraced many of the aspects of what make this movie as enjoyable for me as it was.
Yeah.
So
go watch it, folks. It's apparently $3.99. Pay the extra buck.
Pay the extra buck. Look,
so you can own it forever.
It's not even $5. It's not even $5 to buy a digital copy of this. Just do it. I mean, it's apparently the best way you can get it since you can't get a Blu-ray, blah, blah, blah. Like, just go get it. Like, watch it. Enjoy it. And maybe we should all be just a little less cynical. And I say that knowing that I'm the person who shit all over the movie we watched last week. So maybe I'm being a hypocrite, but hey, I'm going with it.
Here's the thing. I will say this after watching this movie right after Madam Web, which I still have a lot of fondness for. It ain't got nothing on Speed Racer talk. That Madam Web is a so bad it's good situation. Speed Racer is, oh my God, movies can look like this situation.
Yes. Speed Racer is this is a good movie that people really, really missed out on back in 2000.
They really, really do.
So,
and really, the biggest thing that it has made me think is, I never did watch Matrix Revolutions, did I? Or Resurrection, whatever the fourth one was.
Yeah.
I never watched that newest one. I should rewatch all 3 of the original Matrix movies and then maybe watch Resurrection.
Yeah. Maybe you should. Maybe I should.
Maybe I should. You know what's a good movie, though? The Matrix. That's a good movie.
That's a good movie. That is a good movie. But
hey, the Wachowskis make some bangers. They make some stinkers. I'm not going to be here and defend Jupiter Ascending. I'm sorry. I wish I could be that person. There are things that I think are very, very funny about that movie, but it ain't good. But yeah. I will defend Speed Racer now. It is entering my lexicon as a unfairly maligned film that I will stand for.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
And I think that's where we'll end it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new episode. But go watch this movie. It's really fun. And we'll be back. And if you have any questions or if you want to let us know how great this movie is after you watch it, you can contact us at feedback@themiddleofculture.com. Leave us a review, leave us a star rating. We'd love it. And we'll be back and talk to you soon.
Bye.